It's time again to check out some of my favorite signed comics and talk about how I enjoyed the comic book hobby for years without buying comic books. Welcome back, comic book fans. This is Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and I want to welcome you to this episode. This is going to be the second in a series of episodes where I spotlight some of my favorite comics that I have gotten signed over the years and talk about how this was the primary focus of the way I enjoyed the comic book hobby for years without buying any comic books. And we'll get into that in just a moment with a few more details. But if you guys enjoy this kind of content, definitely smash that like, click on the subscribe, and definitely click on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the episodes I put out each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Okay, guys, we're going to get into the books, and we'll talk a little bit more about what I meant by not buying comic books for years. So, what do I mean by I didn't buy comic books for years and instead got my comic books signed? What that meant was I would go to the Baltimore Comic Con. It was the only con that I really went to for many years. In fact, it was just an annual thing. That was the con that I went to. I wasn't heavily into the comic book scene, although every month I was buying comics. I spotlighted my monthly, the way I buy comics, a couple episodes ago with M&M Comics. I'm still with them for over 20 years. That's how I bought my comics. Today, this is how I still primarily buy all of my new comics. But that's what I was getting. Every month books would come in, and that's how I collected for many years. Back in the 90s, when I first moved to Baltimore and I first got my chance to have a LCS or multiple LCSs close by, I went on definitely a buying spree early on, and I bought a lot of comic books, and I built up the collection. But by the time it was around 2000 or the late 90s, I wasn't buying a lot of old back issues. I was primarily just buying new books, and occasionally I guess something would get picked up every now and then. But when the Baltimore Comic Con started, I started going to that, and there was a few creators I would go and get things signed, and I literally would go and do that, and that's primarily what I did. In fact, I didn't spend any money other than the price of admission. Artists usually weren't charging. There was always an exception with that, but for the most part, I didn't spend almost any money when I went to the comic conventions. So I focused on getting things signed. And over the years, as I did in the first episode I did with this type of theme, and I talked about, was I started at a certain point getting the same comics signed by the other creators on the book when I had that opportunity. In fact, that became a primary focus, and I stopped getting unsigned comics just freshly signed by anybody unless I had a chance to be able to get multiple people on there. So for years, this is the way I collected, and that's kind of what this series of episodes are going to be about. Or mostly these books, in fact, every one of these books you're probably going to see are going to have multiple signatures on it, and they came at different times. They weren't necessarily done at the same show, although there are exceptions to that. So this is the second episode in this series, and I've got some great books to show off, and let's just get into it. So the first book on the list here was back, I believe it was around 2012, 2013, somewhere in that time frame. J. Scott Campbell showed up at the Baltimore Comic Con, and another creator was there. He's always been around this area coming to cons for years, so I was able to get this right here. It is Danger Girl number 3. The variant cover with the Adam Hughes cover right here. Now, I did get J. Scott Campbell to sign his, I think I ended up the first 3 or 4 issues of Danger Girl were signed. So why am I not showing the first issue or even that beautiful second issue? That cover with Abby Chase is just absolutely gorgeous. But why am I getting this one? Why is this one the one I'm spotlighting today? Well, it's because in that one show with J. Scott Campbell, Adam Hughes was there as well. And I'm going to go a little closer, and you can see the beautiful paint pens down there at the bottom with both of their signatures right there. So that's why I'm spotlighting this one instead of some of the other J. Scott Campbell signed books, because it was just him on those books. Now, those are great books, don't get me wrong. And it kind of goes against what I was saying, that I I was focusing on getting not getting new comics or unsigned comics signed by a single person. Well, when you get those opportunities over the years, Baltimore Comic Con has grown over the years, and especially when you got into the early teens or 2010 and that time frame, it really expanded with a lot of different artists that I had never got to meet before. So there's going to be tons of exceptions where I started new books over the years. And this was an exception, not this particular book, but this book right here goes into what this series is all about getting those multiple signatures on these books. And still some of my favorite books too. But what a beautiful Adam Hughes cover. In fact, I didn't even, until I did the research for this video, I didn't even realize that this was a variant cover. I just thought this was the regular cover. This is actually, in fact, a variant. And when I looked it up, honestly, I never even recognized the regular J. Scott Campbell cover to this book. In fact, I may have to go out there and find that book, because all the other issues are J. Scott Campbell covers that I have, but I don't think I ever saw issue number 3, the regular one. But I'm super happy with this. And what's nice about this is a lot of these books are going to be in super great condition. And I'm looking at that black spine over there, and it looks super tight. I don't see any spine ticks. Now, I have to look at the backside, but you never know. At some point, at any point on any of these books, they may be a candidate to get sent to CBCS to have those signatures verified and encapsulated. Now, at some point in the series, there's going to be some books that are going to come out that are actually sent to CGC and to CBCS, and we'll go over that in more detail at that time. But just know that just any raw book that I have on here, they can only go to CBCS to have that verified signature, because otherwise it's going to go to CGC. Your grade may be fine, but you're going to get a green label, and it's going to just say signature on cover. And they're not going to acknowledge who that person is. They're just going to acknowledge that there is a cover. There is a signature. So your option is send it to CBCS. But when I do some of those books, I will show you some of those as well in a later episode in this series. But the second one, you know what? Let's just leave this up here, and we'll go on to the second one. Now, the second one, actually, when I say I did this for years, literally from the early 90s all the way up until today, most of the time I'm talking about this is the way I collected over the years. Now, in the last 5 years, well, actually about the last 6 years, I have gotten into going to the smaller cons, and even Heroes Con, and a lot of my local shows in this Baltimore area that I've been slowly picking up a lot more back issues. And doesn't mean I still don't collect when I go to the cons the same way. I still focus on books that I can get multiple signatures on a lot. I'm doing a lot of everything these days, so it's not like I drop off and not do this kind of collecting anymore just because I'm focusing now more on back issues and getting CGC witness signatures or things like that. I still do the same kind of thing, and I did it with this one right here. I got all 3 signatures this year. I believe it was down at Heroes Con. You've got this. Oh, this is Marvel and DC present the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans. They teamed up. This was in December of 1981. And you've got a story with Darkseid and the Dark Phoenix teaming up, and then you've got the X-Men and the New Teen Titans teaming up as well by the creative team of Chris Claremont and Walt Simonson. And it is some of the most gorgeous artwork. And I want to say that this is, am I wrong? Is this the official 3rd appearance of Deathstroke as well? So beautiful single issue right here. It's right up there. I mean, honestly, this is probably one of the best stories from that era. And you got to think of it, 1981, the 2 biggest books in the world, New Teen Titans, X-Men, and here it is all coming together. And so I ended up getting Walt Simonson, and I'll do it down here. He signed down here at the bottom. It doesn't show up all that well. He did it in black, so it kind of disappears a little bit. But you got right up here, you've got Chris Claremont. Of course, he's known for signing over top of the trade dress. But wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. There is another signature here. Who is that? It's Louise Simonson, or as she was before she was married, Louise Jones, back in the day when she was one of the editors before she was married to Walt. So that was really cool to get all three of them on this book right here. So that was a lot of fun, and that was fun. Even though you're having to pay for signatures these days, it was fun to go. Actually, you're not paying for what you. When at HeroesCon, you didn't have to pay for Walt and Louise. Now I think that's changed. By the time they were in Baltimore this last year, they were charging, and they finally figured out that they have to charge to kind of slow down the onslaught of how many people are getting things signed. So this was at HeroesCon, and I know I got both of them for free on that one. Now, Claremont was a charged signature, so it definitely cost me a little bit of money. But I couldn't be happier to get that into the PC the way it is. This is a super tight copy, just like that Danger Girl book was. Again, another candidate for CBCS. And guys, you can let me know, what do you think about going to CBCS these days in general? Now, I'm a big advocate for sending in signed books to CBCS because that is your only option, as I talked about before. But with the scandal going on at CGC and with the new labels that CBCS has, I think they have definitely upped their game, and the gap has definitely closed. In fact, there's some channels out there talking about the prices that people are starting to get for some of the CBCS books compared to the CGC books. The gap's closing a little bit here, guys. So definitely solid option to send this into CBCS. All right, third book is just absolutely one of my favorite books, and I will tell you, I think I've got all 12 issues of this maxi series signed by the two primary creators, and I think I had gotten the third creator once he came onto that book. I think I've gotten him on all of them except for one book. I'd have to go back and double check this now, but here is Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 7, The Death of Supergirl, by the creative team of Marv Wolfman and George Perez. This is a Grail cover. I've heard people talk about this original art for this cover right here is one of the Grail pieces of artwork out there. Absolutely stunning piece of George Perez artwork. One of my favorite series of all time, especially this issue and the following issue with the death of the Flash, Barry Allen. Well, George Perez was a long-time attendee at the Baltimore Comic-Con for a lot of years. I'm talking probably a good 10 to 14 year stretch probably that he was there, just, if not every year, just about every year. So every year I would go. And again, most of this time, before the advent of CGC in the hobby for the most part, you weren't seeing artists charge for autographs for the most part. You still had your Jim Sterankos and your Neil Adams and Stan Lee that had charges, but everybody else was basically for free. And so I got every one of the Crisis books signed by George Perez. Now, Marv Wolfman is not somebody that showed up a lot, but when he did, I think I've gotten every issue signed by Marv Wolfman as well. A couple years ago, when Jory Ordway started showing up at the Baltimore Comic-Con, I realized, wait a minute, he did the inking for a lot of these issues. So a few years ago, Jory Ordway started showing up at the Baltimore Comic-Con. So I realized that he had done the inking for a lot of the issues for Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I pulled all of these out, and I think I found all of them except for one. I can't remember, I think it was issue 5. I'm having problems with one of these issues finding it, but I ended up having him sign most of these issues. This is one of those I'm going to have to sit down one day and pull all 12 issues together just to see if I've got the complete set at this point or not. But this issue here was definitely one of my favorite ones, and couldn't be happier to have George Perez and Marv Wolfman on there, and it was a bonus to get Jory Ordway on here as well. So that is just a great piece in my collection right here. All right, so the fourth book that I want to talk about is an absolute classic. It is a pretty big book these days, And I have got a couple of graded versions from my original PC. And this is one of those back issues that I'm going to be focusing on probably this year, trying to find a really good raw copy to get graded at some point. The graded copies have just gone out of sight, but you can still get raws fairly, I don't want to say fairly reasonably, but depending on how much money you want to spend. But here is one of my original copies that I had that I took out, and this is one I should get graded at some point, but it does have some ticks on it, and I don't know if I really want to get it graded and just have a low grade on here and just have it signed. I don't know, is there an option to send it to CBCS? You guys can let me know. Can you send it to CBCS and say, hey, I just want the autographs authenticated and I do not want the book graded? That might be an option. I think that's something you can do. I think that's something you can do with CGC. But here you go. It is Amazing Spider-Man 252, the first appearance of the black suit. Let me turn that to get the glare away. There you go. So I started getting this signed, I want to say probably in the early 2000s, and I just worked over the years getting it signed, but you can see definitely some signatures on here. What a great book. And you can tell we're definitely into the 2000s because we're getting the cover signed now, as opposed to the first episode in the series where you saw most of the books getting signed on the inside splash page. Times changed, CGC changed things where people were wanting to get the books signed on the cover, so when you get them graded, you could see the signature. So here it is with the cover, and I'm going to take it out. I'm not taking it out of the bag, but I will zoom it up here just a little closer so you can see some stuff there. So at the very top, you can see there's Tom DeFalco, who did the script along with Roger Stern. Down below right here, who is that? That's Ron Frenz right here. He was the penciler on the cover and on the interior. Over here on the side right there it's a little harder to see, is Brett Breeding. Is it Breeding or Bretting? You guys can let me know on that as well. He did the inks on the interior. And the one that you can't see at all down here because he signed it too quick before I could even say anything. There, you can see it a little bit right there. He did it in gold. That's Klaus Janson. He did the inks on the cover here. And right dead in the center is Jim Shooter. And this is a book I will eventually probably want to get it encapsulated. If not, as I said, I don't necessarily want to get it graded and just have a low grade on it. I think that grade would just diminish what this book is. But I'm not going to do anything until I'm able to get to meet Roger Stern again. Once I get Roger Stern on this book, that'll be the time that I take this book and get it encapsulated at the very least. So, but I couldn't be happier to have this kind of book in my PC. Been fun working on such a big book like this. That's one of those things, just like the first episode in the series with that X-Men 94, getting the main creators on that book. This right here is just, probably is one of my favorite multi-sign books in my PC. All right, so the last book. Now, you want to talk about favorite project multi-sign books. Now, this right here is just a monster gem. This is one that will eventually get signed. Well, I don't know. I'm going to go. I may not get this graded as well, but I would love to get this encapsulated. I may have to do one of those self-encapsulation things. I think that would actually be better for both of these, to be honest with you. But here it is, and I will show you some interior work as well, but the signatures are all on the cover. It is Superman Gallery. It is from 1993, and it is a book where you've got just a gallery of Superman covers and art on the inside done by a whole host of different artists throughout the generations. I think they even have some artwork from some of the original Superman cartoon show from the 40s in there as an example as well. And it goes through, as I said, 1993. So this book, what makes this special is not just the amount of signatures on here, but where it came from originally. This was a Christmas gift from my mother back in 1993, I'm pretty sure, because it came from QVC. Back in the day, QVC did a lot of comic book stuff, signed stuff. And that's something that you may see a few more books on this kind of episode. that I've gotten from QVC, all from my mom. They were easy gifts. She would buy stuff from QVC all the time. And this she bought. This is probably, to me, this is probably the best thing she ever bought, because this book right here, and I'll show you, I still have the certificate of authenticity right there that has a list of the artists that were already signed on this book. And this book came with George Perez, Neil Adams, Jerry Ordway, Dan Jurgens, Kurt Swan, and Jim Steranko on this cover. And that right there, oh my God, what a great all-star lineup of artists. Well, you go through this book and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people that I have met over the years. Why haven't I gotten this signed? And at a certain point, I realized, why am I not getting this signed? So I started taking it over the years to whenever I see a certain artist that might be that is in this book, I've added them to that. So in the last 20 some years, I have added Frank Miller, and I will do a little bit more of a close-up here, but I've added Frank Miller, Walt Simonson, who did the cover. That's his artwork contribution to this book, by the way, is this cover. Steve Rude, I'm going to mispronounce this, John Bogdan, how do you say it? Bogdanov? Is that how you say his name? I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. Brett Breeding, we've just talked about that earlier today. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and Bob McLeod. And all of them have artwork inside this book. And so it is just an absolute all-star lineup of artists on here. And I'll go real close. You can see Frank Miller is right there in the middle. And there's Jim Steranko. I can't remember where everybody is at this point, but there's in black again. In black was Walt Simonson. Sometimes I think you got to get to him quick so he will sign in the pen that you want. But let's open this up real quick, and I will just show you some of the artwork in here. Now, a lot of these type of books, in fact, I've got a Batman gallery. I don't know if it's called gallery, but I've got a Batman book like this that I've got signed over the years that I've actually had the artist sign on their artwork on the interior. But this one, I decided to, since it was already signed on the front, I just stuck with it. So you can see a beautiful Neil Adams cover right there, and that's Mobius. I doubt that's an autograph I'll never get. Joe Shuster, and there's Kurt Swan artwork. Oh, here you go. There you go with Frank Miller and John Byrne. And I'm not being very careful with this book. I should be a lot more careful. Oh, here we go. There's Todd McFarlane and Tom Grummett with Jerry Ordway. Let's see what else. I'm just going to... Yeah, there's Mike Zeck. Got to see Mike Zeck again. I talked about him in my last episode. Guys, I need you guys to find me Mike Zeck. And here is the cartoon show from the early 40s. Yeah, I'm not going to do everything. You guys can get this book. It's, let me thumb through and I'll show you. Yeah, check out this painting by Jerry Ordway. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? That is just fantastic stuff. Let's see what else we got here. You can see they even did. There's a Kellogg's ad with some Superman artwork, and Wayne Boring, right? A longtime Superman artist back in, yeah, this is in the 50s right there. So you can see that there's a lot of different artwork in here, and there's a lot of other artists that are still out there available that I still want to add to this. Now, you saw a quick glimpse of the back of the board right here when I showed you the COA right there, but you see these notes right here? These notes right here, I put the list on there so I can quickly assess if I need to pull it out for a con. The ones that I'm still looking for that are real, that I can definitely still get if he'll actually show up at the con, is Bill Sienkiewicz is on there. Mike Zeck, we're going to try to find someday. I hope to God we can find Mike Zeck, guys. I'm worried. Let's see if we can find him. Let's make that our mission out there in the comic book community. Um, I doubt that we'll ever be able to get John Byrne. I don't know if we'll ever see him at a show again, but I will add that to this book definitely. Todd McFarlane, I haven't seen him at a show since he came to Baltimore at this point, 15, 20 years ago. I don't know. It's been a long time. P. Craig Russell, I've gotten in the past, but I haven't seen him in years. Yeah, there's a few on here. Basically, there's a few left on this book that I can possibly still get, but I pretty much, at the moment, I'm roadblocked on adding anybody else to this book. But what a great book. I say this every time, I can't be happier to have this in my PC. These are the books, guys, we talk a lot on this channel about selling comics and making profit and losing money and things like that. And I think I'm kind of happy with the way this direction of the channel is going to be shifting a little bit this year. We're going to be talking more about the love of the comics themselves and keeping things for your PC. And this is the way, as I said, I've collected for a lot of years without even buying a comic book at the shows. Again, I qualified that by not buying comic books at the comic book show. Now, I still, again, would have my new monthly books coming in, but very few back issues for a long time. My primary focus was getting these books signed when I went to the con, and that's the way I enjoyed the comic book hobby without buying comic books per se. So that's it for this episode. Got 5 great issues right here. I hope you will continue watching the channel and will continue watching for these type of episodes that I put out periodically. These are a lot of fun. These are great to talk about. I've got so many signed comics, and I'm going to continue showing off some of these as we continue this series of these types of episodes right here. So thank you for joining me today. Definitely leave me a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of these books and what you think about these signatures. And if you can find me, Mike Zeck, guys. Find me, Mike Zeck. And if you're ever interested on anything on my channel, definitely reach out to me at collectorauctions@yahoo.com or DM me on my Instagram account. You can also check out what I currently have for sale in my eBay store or on my Shortbox page. Both of those links are in the description below. So that's it, guys. I'm out of here. You guys have a great day. I will see you for the next episode. And remember, every comic has a story.